My coaching job at Wichita State lets me go to a lot of really cool places, and this week I'm in College Station, Texas. And behind me is the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum on the campus of Texas A&M University. And so definitely a busy place. There's actually students that go to classes in this area here. You know, I'm not a political person, but I do like the history of the presidents and kind of learning about their history, and these museums always do a good job of telling history. And so, you know, whether you're agree or disagree on one side of the aisle or the other, I hope you watch this in appreciation for history, just like I do. So I like going to different museums, different presidential museums, and I hope to go to all of them someday, no matter who they were. I'm sure I'll learn no matter where I'm at. So, but yeah, excited to check this out.
Very impressive to walk in the main building and see all these photos, big expansive area. So there's 3 places we're basically going to explore. This main building has, I'd say, like 90% of the stuff we're going to look at, and starts here with obviously pictures throughout his life. And when you walk in, you see like the presidential limousine, and I've never seen a president in person while they're in office. I don't think I've ever seen a president in person, period, past or present. And so to see like the limousine is cool because that's what he would have been riding in. And a lot of these museums that I've been to before, they start with the family, where they grew up, and this one is like that too. The museum is basically chronological and laid out very well, but the beginning here is just all about his family and where he went to school and things like that. I like how they have the picture frames. Kind of makes you feel like somebody's house that would have a bunch of random picture frames and pictures of their family growing up. He played baseball, was a good athlete, so it's neat to see pictures like that of him as an athlete. So he went to Phillips Academy, which was in Andover here, as you see, and young George there in school. Pierce family, that was Barbara's family, so they have a section devoted to her family as well. She's famous for wearing those pearls. And then when you start getting beyond all the family stuff, it starts getting into more of his adult life. He was a pilot in the U.S. Navy Reserve during World War II. And that was before he graduated from Yale. And so they show things about what happened while he was in service.
Bush himself landed in the sea and pulled himself onto a life raft, in which he drifted for 2 hours.
I remember being scared, and I remember wondering what happened to the crewmen that were with me. I knew the fleet was going south, so I knew if I wasn't rescued, I would be captured.
So like I said, after the war, he graduated from Yale, and there's him in his baseball attire. Cool picture to the right of that of him with Babe Ruth, receiving something from Babe Ruth for Yale's baseball team. I think this was the first family car, and shows them exploring the country, kind of like people might do in Route 66 back in the day. He established the oil company, Zapata Corporation, and so they have a whole section here about taking the risk as a oil man. I like how they have the mark where you've been, how tall you've been. That's, every family can relate to that. So then it gets more into the political section. He ran for Senate in 1964 and lost, but he was elected to Congress in 1966. Nixon appointed Bush as the ambassador to the United Nations in 1971. These are things that I didn't know really too much. I was, junior high when he was president. After a short chat with George there, talks more about his political career. He was named the Republican National Committee Chair in 1973. Ford appointed him as the liaison to the People's Republic of China in 1974. And then he was director of the CIA in 1976. He ran for president in 1980, lost to Reagan, and as you probably know, he was selected as Reagan's vice president. So there's a section here that was 8 years long. It's a fairly small section. I think sometimes the vice president gets overlooked for the most part. Pretty significant position, but there's not a ton about his vice presidency. But obviously in 1988, he ran again for president, and he beat Michael Dukakis, so Bush Quayle, were president and vice president in 1988 to 1992. And now we get into his presidential years, which are the most significant parts of the museum and why the museum exists.
I do not mistrust the future. I do not fear what is ahead.
Kurt, I need your help. Where are you at?
That was a baseball glove in his desk. They said he always kept a mitt in his desk for playing catch, I guess, if he needed it, since he was so athletic as a young guy, still enjoyed tossing the baseball around. Section about Barbara and her passions during those 4 years in office. Literacy and education was her main things. And then they have an area where I think this is decorated kind of maybe like their living room in the White House, what it would have been like. So kind of interesting to imagine that being inside the White House, if that's your home. Camp David was a place he'd go to every once in a while, and this was what his office would have looked like at Camp David. The tearing down of the Berlin Wall was significant during his political career. So they have that here, and they have a piece of the wall. One of the more interesting things was the Situation Room that you might hear about, and to be in there, even though it's a mock-up of it, was pretty cool to imagine what that might have felt like in some of the most extreme times of being a president, and then into the Iraq War, where I'm sure they were in that room a lot.
5 times in as many weeks. Most countries share our concern for principle, and many have a stake in the stability of the Persian Gulf. This is not, as Saddam Hussein would have it, the United States against Iraq. It is Iraq against the world.
They even have a wall dedicated to when he lost to Clinton in 92. And so he was only a one-term president, and then Clinton and Gore took over office in 92. And that's pretty much the end of this part of the museum. They have a few other things like orders of merit given to him from all around the world. I breezed through that. You could spend an entire day if you're a historian. One last thing was the presidential dog, Sully. Nice that they have that. Oh yeah, they have one other section that I didn't go in, I saved for the end. I'm guessing this is a part that they change from time to time. This was about the history of music in America. Kind of out of place for a presidential museum, but I'm guessing this is just to bring in people every year to see something different. They go by every decade It's really interesting. It has very little to do with anything with George Bush, but I enjoyed stopping in and checking out stuff from 100 years ago to famous musicians and their instruments, some of their clothing. They had some good music playing throughout. A short walk over to the next building is where they house the Union Pacific 4141, which is a locomotive painted in honor of Bush. This was in service from 2005 to about 2019. And then this is Marine One. And it's in the same building as the locomotive. Back outside, we take a short walk. There's obviously Bush, and this is the Bush School. So Texas A&M students were over here today, and they were in and out of that building. So there's a small pond here. People can fish and can use barbless hooks. I'm guessing that's a reference to Barbara. And then beyond the pond is a short walk over to the gravesite.
This seems like a pretty appropriate place to end the video. And it's a really nice museum. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm not a real political person, but I do enjoy the history, and they do a great job here with the history. And then you have the locomotive and the Marine Force One and the nice cemetery gravesite back here. So yeah, I really like it. And if you like history, there's a lot of interesting history that happened during George H.W. Bush's life, and it's told well here. Check, check. 1, 2. Check. Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent.